Hello everyone, you join me atop Cleve Hill. No, not that one. We're in Somerset and Devon this week to visit three trainers with big aspirations to travelling 96 miles up the road and heading to that Cleve Hill come March. Here's what's coming up in the latest edition of This Racing Life. Jeremy, you know this place like the back of your hand. It's been home to you for your whole life. Right?
Yes, it has. Yeah. Born here. Yeah.
Did you look at certain parts of the estate and think, okay, we'll put a gallop in there. We can be flexible with exactly what we want. Did you have the vision from the beginning?
Well, unfortunately, being in the national park, you're slightly limited as to what you're allowed to do. Well, we're lucky that we've got sort of 400 acres here. A lot of it's all permanent pasture, so we've got various grass gallops we use as well as these all-weather facilities.
So, what would we have seen in the early 90s on this patch of land as it stood?
You'd have seen 150 cows marching up the road to go and find some grass, and a slightly frustrated dairy farmer with poor prices, returns, awful lot of slurry floating around the place, and just an awful lot of hard work.
Your means of escape was the point-to-point world. It would eventually lead into having a licence. What really made you take the plunge from the point-to-point sphere into having your professional?
Well, two things really. I mean, I think we could see dairy farming was going to give us up at some point, and the watchword was always with the sort of farming thing was to diversify. But the real catalyst was actually probably gone to lunch.
What I love about his story is that the racing career is only just a part of it. If you'd have walked into the yard, even as recently as last spring and a few months before, he would have still been holding court. He would have still been helping other horses in their stages of their career, even at the age of 22.
Yeah, no, he really lived a very full life, and you know, when he finished running under rules, my daughter Laura rode him in a few pointers, gave her a great spin round Cheltenham in the 4-miler at the Hunter Chase meeting, and yeah, latterly, if ever we had somebody coming up to the yard for an interview, you wanted to see how they rode, you'd pop them up on Gone to Lunch, and he would always half run away with them. But you knew perfectly well that he would stop at the top and they'd be safe. But you did get a fairly good idea of their ability, riding-wise. And latterly, Camilla used to ride him around the sheep, and you know, just he was a good fun ride anyway. So you know, you could just ride him for pleasure. He was great.
And for a horse who was your first winner under rules, who took you to all those big days, you need that marquee banner horse early on in your career, and he put your name in lights.
Well, he did, and look, you need those horses all the time, don't you? You need the constant stream of those, and we've been lucky that we had him, and then we had Melodic Rendezvous. You know, before that we had Southwestern, who was a very good hunter chaser and pointer, and latterly Golden Ace and Dashwood Drasher. But you know, we've been lucky that every few years we've managed to stumble across one that has taken to those big days. But you know that's what we all need, isn't it?
You mentioned a Golden Ace, who we can see her Ryan Mares Novice Hurdle trophy proudly in between us. How have you assessed the season so far?
Well, we've never managed to get her right, and running up to the festival last year, and we hadn't managed to run her until after Christmas, and you know, just niggly issues. Never managed to get it quite right this year. So I feel the two runs we've had partly have been over probably the wrong trip on certainly at Cheltenham, probably far too soft a ground for the distance. But I don't feel we've had her quite where we want to be. You know, she's getting there, but we're not quite there yet. So I hope, you know, now through the spring hopefully she'll flourish and we can get her back to her peak.
Options leading up to the spring festivals, though, they're wide open, seemingly. You've got lots of different routes you could take.
Yeah, we've got, we just put an entry in for the Betfair at Newbury. We've got the Kingwell, and if you were ready in time, we could run her in the International at Cheltenham. So, you know, you've got 3 options there, which I hope we managed to get a spot on for one of them anyway.
Lovely to be in this position where you're able to talk about these marquee checkpoint races leading up to spring festivals, and it's all because she was the horse that broke your Cheltenham Festival duck. There had been near misses aplenty along the way. Aside from the race itself, what do you remember of the day?
Well, I think what was particularly nice about the day was a very good friend of mine had taken a box there, and so there were a lot of my owners in this box, and after the race, even though it was teeming with rain, they all came round to the winner's enclosure and were chanting at myself and the horse and the owners, and it was just lovely having all those people there, because actually if they hadn't been there, because it was raining so much, there probably wasn't the crowd. So no, it was just wonderful, and I never thought, you know, I was beginning to think that, you know, Cheltenham is not the be all and end all really. You know, I've had enough goes, I've been disappointed so many times, you know, maybe I'll get over it, and, you know, maybe it's not the end of the world, but I have to say the day was just magical. I mean, it really was magical. You
referenced the chanting. Have you ever gone by Jezza before, or not necessarily?
Well, everybody knows that I actually really hate being called Jezza. But anyway, no, I'll accept it on a day like that.
As the crow flies, it's 4 miles from Holworthy Farm down to Sand Hill, the home of Philip Hobbs and Johnson White. The latter turned up on the former's doorstep many years ago at this point with aspirations to be a jockey, and he had some work experience. It didn't really go to plan, but for what he lacked in the saddle, he's more than made up for in the behind-the-scenes involvement, so much so that he is now a joint licence holder with Philip Hobbs, and the team are in flying form. Johnson, take me back to the very beginning, the first steps you took in this yard. You were a young man at this stage.
I was a very young man. I was about 13 or 14. My mum delivered me here one Sunday evening with a view to doing some work experience here. And my family and Philip's family had gone back a long way, knew each other. And the first time I met Philip, he said, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a jockey, that's why I'm here. Anyway, he took one look at my size 12 feet and he said, you've got absolutely no chance. And as it turns out, he was absolutely spot on. So yeah, my dreams of being champion jockey were dashed at a very early stage of meeting Philip.
Because you grew up not too far from where
Yeah, only half an hour away from here, so it's home from home, so very much so.
And you were a 21-year-old assistant trainer. I mean, these days trainers are all ages. Was that uncommon then to be so young and put in as assistant?
Yes, I think it probably was, especially with the experience or lack of experience, however you want to look at it, that I'd had at the time. And it was probably, you know, plenty young enough to be doing the job I was doing, and I was combining the riding as well at the same time. And after, well, a couple of years, something had to give. I couldn't ride and be assistant trainer to Philip because I couldn't commit to owners, you know, where I might be riding at the weekend and that sort of thing. And you know, as I said earlier, the sort of training and assistant training side of things had a lot more longevity to it than to my mediocre riding.
It's probably best to ask this question now rather than on day one or a month or 2 months into it. How have the dynamics changed, if they have at all?
The daily dynamics haven't changed a whole lot. I'm going racing a lot more now than I used to. I didn't used to go racing much at all. And there's probably more pressure on me and bringing new owners in and buying new horses to try and keep, you know, keep pushing forward, which I'm enjoying doing. And as I say, the horses that, you know, we bought, my daughter Molly's you know, heavily involved with me in buying horses, which is great to have her on board, and she's great at running a couple of syndicates for me as well. So yeah, it's just putting syndicates together, bringing new people in and buying horses to fit that criteria of what a certain team of people are looking for.
Is that pressure that you put on yourself willingly because it's now you're a business owner? You're now, it's Philip Hobbs and Johnson White. It's not Johnson White working for Philip Hobbs. You have more of a stake in this now.
Well, Philip, very much runs the business, but at the same time, we need to keep horses in the yard and be progressive, with quality of horses, and that's where hopefully I'm helping out to a small degree. But I've got a number of horses in the yard now that I sort of have bought and oversee and speak to the owners, on a regular basis, and that doesn't mean to say that Philip's doing any less. He's still just as very much hands-on and as involved as he always has been. But I've just taken on a little bit more, involvement in the buying of horses and selling and that sort of thing.
Johnson, Lowry's Bar, what a star he's been. Not just in the recent runs, but his overall record, it really speaks for itself.
Yeah, very much so. And personally for me, it's a lovely story. A great friend of mine said that when I started training or joined the licence, he wanted to be the first owner to have a horse with me. And my daughter happened to be at a point-to-point in Ireland with Brian Murphy. And she rang me and said, Dad, this horse has just finished second on his only run in his point-to-point. I think it would suit Alistair really well. So I rang Alistair, and Molly is also his goddaughter, so there's that tie-in as well, and said, I think Molly's found your horse in Ireland. He's by Malnass, he's run once, finished second. What do you think? And he was very keen on the idea. And so he, as I say, run just the once, finished second. He arrived here not looking at his greatest, so we chucked him out for the summer. And we ran him over 2 miles at Wincanton first time out, thinking that it'd be far too short for him, but won his maiden hurdle, and he'll have entries at Cheltenham on the 25th of this month, either in a novice handicap or in a handicap. And I think Cheltenham's going to be 2.5 miles, and I think he'll improve again for stepping up to 3 miles as well in time. But he's rated 144 now, very much on the upgrade, and he hasn't put many feet wrong for us, while he's been here. So.
But these 3 milers of the future, they do need that little bit of speed. Great, he's been showing it.
Very much so, and he's not a horse that he works very well at home, and I thought we'd be going further than we are by now. But equally, as you rightly say, he's showing enough speed over sort of 2.3, 2.5 to be travelling and being competitive in those races. So until we need to step him up and trip, he'll stay at that trip.
This is going to be a great day for Philip Hobbs and Johnson White, because Tom Donifon completes a treble for the yard in the hands of James Turner.
A couple of trebles in December, I think 12 winners from 50 runners in the month alone. That's the kind of thing that builds a solid foundation for an assault on the spring festivals.
Very much so, and I think we've got horses that we're considering for the spring festivals, and have every right to be considered for them as well. And I think we're a very, very public industry. Everyone sees exactly what we're doing on a daily basis, and you don't have to go very long without having a winner before people start saying, "Oh, you're having a bad time," but yes, thanks, hadn't noticed. But equally, if you're having a good time, it just gives people confidence that their horses are in the right hands, and we haven't forgotten what we're doing after all this time.
Just finally, what do you think the 13, 14-year-old Johnson White would have made of all of this? You've worked your way up from a work experience kid, riding out, dreaming of being a jockey, to now being on the licence. It must be pinch yourself stuff.
Very much so, and walking into the yard, as a 13, 14-year-old, I could never have dreamt that I'd still be here, aged what I am now. No, I mean, and as I said to you earlier, I just consider myself extremely lucky to be doing a job that I enjoy doing, and I don't actually look upon it as a job. And I do say to any new member of staff, you've got to treat it as a way of life rather than job, because it's not 9 to 5. It's as many hours as you put into it, and you'll hopefully get more out of it. So I consider myself very fortunate to be doing something I love.
While a blank checkbook and agents scouring the continent for the next big thing would make things infinitely easier, it's just not reality for trainers like Nigel Hawke. But what he is armed with is out-of-the-box thinking, and, along with wife Catherine, it's not just training racehorses that they aim to turn a profit with. Nigel, it's great to be by the fire. It was cold out there.
It's cold out there.
It's lovely now to be in the warmth, in a place where someone's happiest day of their life can take place because you've diversified the business.
Yes, the space was available, a few suggestions. So I said we've made this a sort of wedding venue, but it's not just that, it's for anything you want really. But it's sort of Cheltenham week. We always have a few owners here and watch the racing here, so it's all good fun.
Catherine, we see a lot of different things on our travels around in this racing life. We've seen a golf course on a racing yard, we've seen a pigeon hut, but I've never seen a wedding venue at the same place as racehorses. How did this come to be?
So it was probably a project that we did in lockdown. This used to be our old generator shed because we had no mains electric. We have mains electric now. Started clearing the barn out. A neighbour said, "Oh, could we have our daughter's wedding reception here?" And we said, "Yeah, of course." And it sort of grew from there, really.
Okay. So, and how quickly did things progress? It sounds like from idea to actual fruition, there probably wasn't as much time as most people would think.
So it was a labour of love because I enjoy renovating buildings. And we also had a few people that said, actually, that's a good idea. We'd like to have our wedding there. So we got it licensed after we did all the building work, and it snowballed from there, really. I sort of took it in my stride. Nigel was a bit more apprehensive than me, but he sort of kept his head down, really. But we've got such a lot of clever local people here that made the task really easy. So full credit to them as well.
Dare I ask, what's next? What do you want to add to it if you had a blank cheque?
I think I'd want to do the last accommodation cottage for accessibility. And then I think we've done our lot here for the wedding side of it. There's certain things that we want to do with the racing, just to add on bits that will make sort of the training of the horses more easy for Nigel. So that, yeah, once I've spent my money on the weddings, it will be back to the racing.
It's work in progress. We've been here now 10, 11, 12 years, and we're still, you know, progressing all the time, if you know what I mean. You know, we go back to the old Tiger Rose story, but obviously, you know, he was obviously a horse. We bought him originally when he came here first of all, but he was always bought to be sold to help the whole project we got here. And it's, as I said, it's fantastic, it's exciting, and things are getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Well, you mentioned him, why not get straight into him? Tiger Roll, you had him for one run,
yeah,
and it was a winning run. You'd picked him up for 10 grand
yeah.
Prior to that. You sold him on for much, much more.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a lovely story, and people always say the most obvious, don't you wish you kept him? Well, if I knew he was going to win 2 Grand National fights, of course I wish I kept him. But as I said, we make it very clear, he was bought to be sold from day one. And I was only thinking this morning, to be fair to everyone, they're good. And the only person who begged me to keep him was Mark Quinlan. He was a jockey at the time, and he was right. But as I said, I found that race at Market Racing that day. There was only 5 runners. It was a business we were running, and we treated it like a business. Funny enough, after that, a couple of years after, I met Tim Easterby somewhere, and his horse, I think, was second, and he actually thought it was a flying machine. So I'd known that, but it wouldn't have made any difference anyway because the horse was there to be sold. And I feel very proud about the whole story because what he's done for racing is very, very good, and I feel like I'm a small part of it.
And ever since, I'd imagine you've been scratching around trying to find the next Tiger Roll. But I'm sure while they might not have necessarily gone for the money that he did when you sold him on, there have been lots of Tiger Rolls in a way that have been helping up to build up all parts of your business.
Well, this is just, I mean, we're running like that. I mean, we've done very well with a horse called Torrance this year. Yeah. It's incredible to think that he got beat round Cartmel in end of August, and he nearly won a Grade 1 at Chepstow the other day, if you like, or the French horse. But yeah, and he's in progressing all the time, and you know, and that's That's our little forte, those type of horses, because as you see what we've got here. They come out of big training centres, a little bit in here. We're very, very intensive with our schooling. I'm a great believer of juvenile school all the time, and if they can half jump, you've got half a chance. And he's gone the right way as well. I'm quite connected with American racing nowadays through one owner as well. So in our time we have actually sent a lot of horses to America to race in America as well. So we got a bit of a sidetrack from that business as well. And who's to say Torrance might go the same direction at some stage.
We're kind of getting to the point where the two seasons of the summer and the winter, especially the first part of the winter game, they're kind of blended. It's not really he's a summer horse and he's a winter horse. You can keep going on with these horses.
Well, I think, and this has come to what we're looking at now, I think the whole thing in racing's changed a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to be champion trainer, but I won't be champion trainer because I ain't got the checkbooks for that, if you know what I mean. So we've got to just concentrate on what we're very good at, is producing young horses. And if that means going to France, Ireland, buying the juveniles, that's what we're doing. The vast percentage of my horses, we've got 70 horses around the place, and the vast majority of them are young horses, and that's what we're doing all the time. What Seagram did for me, it opened up 1,001 doors, and I remember that summer I actually rode in Russia. It was actually Ukraine, Kiev. I rode a winner there, and it was chances like that. Then for 2-3 seasons I was riding a lot in New Zealand when we had no race in the summer, so I was very lucky that I took the chance and I went and saw the world on the backdrop of Seagram and the Grand National, which farther on, it was a great thing. So I've been to an awful lot of yards around the world now, and I've seen an awful lot of things.
Would you say, when it came to taking out your licence, what kind of position were you in life-wise? Your career had ended as a jockey. You'd kind of been almost not forced into it, but it had come a little bit sooner than I'd imagine you thought it would.
Yes. Obviously, you know, I had to retire through a head injury.
Yeah.
And I look back at I mean, put in perspective, I can drive a car for 5 years, so it obviously did help me an awful lot, but it was a very difficult time because physically I felt great, nothing wrong with it too, but obviously mentally I wasn't, I was saying not stable, but I had problems, if you know what I mean, and it took a long time to get over them. Even nowadays, it's a long time now, but people laugh, but I write everything down because I hate forgetting anything, so I don't forget anything. So what happened to me happened, but I've learned to work around it.
Something you told me which really piqued my interest, and I think a lot of racing fans will be delighted, is that the Tiger Roll story, in a way, lives on. Explain.
Yeah, it's funny, it's tomorrow morning actually. I'm off to Ireland. The breeders, to be fair to the breeders, he's always kept in contact with me, and he's got the last in line, which is a 3-year-old filly by Doyen, and he wants me to train it, which is a lovely, lovely thought. So I'm going over hopefully tomorrow to go and see her, and it's something to look forward in the future. But I take it as a great compliment that it's a great family anyway, and he wants to train me the last one on the line.
With regards to the Grand National, I don't think there's many better placed people, given that you've rode a winner over the fences when they were the ultimate test of jumping. No one's saying it's easy to win a Grand National in its current guise, but what have you made of the changes over the past few years?
I'd love to say that, but if Tiger rode back in my time, he would have stopped at the first. That's the difference.
And the race is going to go to Seagram. Seagram wins the Grand National, and at the line, Seagram takes it. Nigel Hawke, its first ride in the race, a winner.
I loved seeing in your office, there's two things that really caught my eye. There's one, an amazing picture of Seagram soaring over an Aintree fence, which I know must be near and dear to you, but just as much, you have a letter from someone, which I think you were surprised to receive.
Yes, Michael O'Leary, letter. He is what he is, and I think, you know, he obviously gets the stick like he does, but to think that he took the time out and did that letter just thanking me for my contribution was the same again, a great compliment, so I had to frame that one.
So at the moment, Jeremy, we're seeing a few horses, they're learning their craft as it stands. Are these the kind of obstacles that Dash or Drashield have been jumping for fun for many years?
Well, this is where they all start and work their way up to various bigger obstacles and eventually up into the field.
And if they're lucky, like him, maybe one day into the top level.
Yeah, I mean he's been a great fun horse, hasn't he? And you know, we've gone back over fences. We may drop back to hurdles again. I mean, we just got to see how he's taking it and whether he's still enjoying it. I mean, at the moment he still seems to have his enthusiasm, but the last Cheltenham race he just looked a little bit taken off his legs. It was probably a bit sharp for him around there.
Is he the kind of horse that surprised you through his career?
He's just you know, he's just very sort of stubborn-headed, and I think that's, you know, what he lacks in maybe ability, he makes up for in just sheer cussedness, bloody-mindedness, you know, and you know, it's probably the best trait to have in a racehorse, isn't it? I mean, I think the really clever ones can be marvellous on the gallops, but actually be really disappointing in a race because they're a bit too smart for it, whereas he's just keep my head down, keep battling, and I'll do my level best.
You're probably too modest to take this, but people absolutely root for you down in this part of the world. Whenever you go to the racecourse, I see it every time punters come up, very popular. With a horse like him, it's suddenly spread to around the country. People in counties as far up as Durham will be giving you compliments about Dash or Jasher. It must be great to have a horse who can give you that kind of.
Well, it is, and it's lovely when people come up to you at the races and say, you know, and just last time at Ascot, somebody had driven all the way up from Truro or something and said, "Oh, we've just driven up just to see him race," and I think it's such a compliment, not necessarily to me, but to the horse, that has sparked their imagination and their joy and pleasure. You know, to go up and see a horse like that, it's a wonderful thing in this sport that we have to offer.
One thing that has been ever present this morning, and I'd imagine on any given day in the yard, is the family feel around the place. It's not just yourself and Camilla heavily involved. Your daughters Laura and Georgina, firm parts of the team here.
Laura rode pointing,
yeah,
and when I was still riding, I remember we used to take them up to the gallops. She and I would ride a couple, and then I'd have to drive the lorry to Cupcombe, where we'd meet the school bus, and she'd have to do a quick change before she went down to school. So Laura's always been the one that's really keen on the horses, and since she had that accident, she's now you know, doing this, but she's also doing para dressage, which is going really well actually. So yeah, hers is the focus much more been on the horses, whereas Georgina's always been interested in the racing, and when she finished university, went and worked for Andrew Boarding and Charlie Longston. So she's got a deep interest in the racing without necessarily doing so much of the riding and hands-on with the horses. We've enjoyed our journey in racing, and they've been always part of that. I mean, ever since we've been doing this, they have been part of it in some way, even if it was being in the cot at a point. And you know, they've grown up helping. You know, they always have. So it's part of their life, and yeah, I mean, they had the option. Georgina's got a very good degree. She could have gone off and worked in London. She doesn't want to do it. She's not interested in that. So if this is what they want to do, then they must give it a go.
If in 2 or 3 years' time the racing TV cameras ring you up and decide we'd like to come back for another visit, what would you be happiest to say your achievement in that time span had been? What are your main ambitions for the next few years?
I think, well, it's to drive this forward so that, as I said earlier, to have better horses. But I mean, really, you know, if the girls want to take this forward, then I would like to see them being the driving force and them having the success that maybe we can give them the foundation for. So yeah, 2 or 3 years' time, I'd like to see you interviewing, not me, because I should be old and very boring, and you be chatting to those girls, them having had another festival winner.
Scott Racing.
Something like that, yeah.